Welcome back to the Parsons Pig pub here in Crawley, and we've got Belinda still with us and Dennis, and got some guests in today, some locals. We've got Rodarbi, Roger and Tony. Going to start with you first, Rodarbi. We're talking about British values, we're talking about the way things have changed over the years. You came to this country in 1965, I believe. You don't look old enough, by the way. How has things changed over the years?
I think I've noticed a lot more division and hatred in the last few years than I've ever done in the past. I've considered myself equal, and therefore I've been treated equally because I don't see myself as different. We came here, we worked hard.
Where did you come from?
India.
India.
I was born in India, but my heritage is Iranian. I'm a Zoroastrian. So there's a lot, if you look into it, there's a lot between Islam and Zoroastrianism. It used to be the religion of the Persian Empire, but there was persecution, and so a lot of us fled to India for refuge, way before my time, way before my time. And so, we came here, we worked hard, we've integrated, we never claimed a penny, we paid into the system. First Asians in the road normally, we never lived in an enclave.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've never experienced any hatred or division because I've always felt at one with society. Yeah. Last few years, even I've begun to feel different. Yeah. Does that make sense? It makes sense. And I don't like it.
Okay. Tony, what about you?
Well, there's a number of issues which I sort of feel quite strong about, but picking up on the point there which Rodarbi meant, I think the key to where we failed with all the immigrants we've had was that there used to be integration, that they used to take part in British life and adopt what were our values. And what seems to have happened now is that they've taken up sort of ghettos where they've adopted the values which they've brought from wherever they've come from, which in a lot of instances are quite alien to British values, and that's where a lot of then the friction develops, and there's a lot of extremists on both sides who then feed on that friction. And
Roger, what can we do to all live in peace, in harmony, and get along together much better? What can we do?
Well, I think this idea of ghettos is not necessarily a bad thing. People like to live among their own, and I think that's happened. You've got Italian quarters, Jewish quarters, you've got all that. I don't think that's necessarily divisive. I think you go to an area, Hounslow is predominantly Asian and so on. I don't see any harm in that. I think the integration is important, but I also think it's important for people to live their own lives. I don't think we should force people to integrate. I think we should force people to speak in a certain way. I'm a plumber. I'm a persecuted minority, believe me. People hate plumbers. One of the most hated groups
that we charge people. It's like 50 quid just for a call out.
It's for all that abuse we get, but we get it not just from me individually. Plumbers, builders, generally. There was a thing on Radio 4 the other day.
Go on, Roger. What is it for a call out?
Well, it's gonna cost you 100 quid to get me out. There's no wonder you're persecuted. Well, exactly that. It's justifiable. The thing is that I'm not readily identifiable as a plumber. I could go incognito most of the time. But anyway, what I'm saying is that I think this whole idea of we're concentrating on small divisions all the time. What's the difference between Islam and Muslim? And all?
Can I just say though, Roger, you want to come and live here?
Yeah.
Learn the flipping language. Well, no, I'm sorry, and accept the fact that the values are and embrace the values and the culture of the country you choose to go and live in. Right? If you want to keep your values and your culture, why the hell did you come here?
Well,
yes, absolutely.
You should demand anything of your host nation if you like. I don't think you should expect
just accept and embrace
to change laws to suit them. But I think you can keep your identity. I think it's perfectly all right.
I get my identity. I'm brown. Well, I'm a Zoroastrian. But I'm also integrated and embraced.
Yes, and it's good for people to learn the language. But it's also
different opinions there, Belinda, between two. It's interesting. So you've got on the one hand you've got Roger, who I assume was born in this country, disagreeing with Rodarbi, was born in a different country. I would suspect that tend to agree with
totally
Rodarbi.
support, Rodarbi, because for me, national unity is so important, and duty and service and community, and people really mind in this country when there's no sense of community. You can't even communicate with your neighbours, or you feel like you're suddenly being discriminated against because, as we know, we have had an assault on Britishness from the left. Very much so that we're feeling ashamed of our country and history, where everyone else is allowed to celebrate their country and history. The other thing is, if, God forbid, we are ever at war or attacked, surely a sense of national identity and brotherhood and sisterhood between communities, which can happen with integration. I think the immigration up to 1997 was amazing for this country. It was at a pace that was sustainable. It didn't put a burden on the infrastructure, and it allowed people time to learn the language and integrate and feel part of being British. So together we can feel like a family. And what's happening with this little parallel universe is no one feels like a family anymore.
Melinda, we've got a very confused looking Dennis. He's shaking his head, he's rolling his eyes, he doesn't agree with you.
Well, I can't, because I was elected MP in 1994, and at every surgery that people like Lee now still does, and I used to do, there would be people coming in that they couldn't get jobs, they couldn't get housing, couldn't get this, couldn't get that, their children weren't being fairly treated. What was the common denominator? The idea that pre-97 it was a paradise of integration.
Here instead of hundreds of thousands, that helped with integration and
I'm terribly
infrastructure.
sorry. The biggest arrival
You
of
should be
immigrants
as well. You should be sorry.
Yeah.
biggest arrival of immigrants in my lifetime came under Margaret Thatcher, because they were needed to do the jobs. A great surge in employment, unemployment in population, has always happened under the Tories. Rishi Sunak last year let in 962,000 immigrants from Nigeria, Pakistan, India, not telling anybody really. Many of them bringing independence. I don't know where they're going to be housed, where the kids are going to get schooling, but that's Tory policy.
I agree with you. It's Tory policy,
So
Lee.
I just wanted to just do a tiny anecdote, backing up actually what you were saying, Roar, about language. I was in a high-level Swiss seminar in Davos, not the famous Davos Symposium, and the Swiss guy replying on behalf of the Swiss parliamentarians said, well, look, there's three things that we do. Number one, Switzerland has got twice the level of immigration, about 27% of the population, than you do in Britain, about 30%. Number two, and we accept it. We don't constantly create tensions about it. Number two, we insist everybody must learn a language. And it's going back to your point. And they put a lot of money into it. We don't spend a penny on now any longer.
If they're all in a country that has three languages, Switzerland is. Dennis.
God, I mean, that's even more difficult. I mean, a lot
to live in Switzerland.
of our people can't speak English. I mean, and number three, they said, we know who's in the country. You can't get into school, housing, health, social insurance, pensions, driver license, unless you can show an identity card. And we had identity cards introduced by Labour in 2010. I've got one. I can show it to you if you like. I still think it's out of date, but it's my little memory thing. First thing, Theresa May, who wasn't the brightest bunny. Oh, wait a minute. Is that misogynist?
That's fine.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Well, I was Belinda on that. She said it was
And it's not
fine.
true, by the way. She's very bright.
First thing she did was get rid of knowing who's in the country. And a lot of our troubles I believe, stem from that decision. Every other country in Europe, right, left, liberal, whatever, people are required to have an identity card.
So how's that going to work with the tens of thousands of people with no documents whatsoever coming over here? They're just going to say, my name's Bob Pratt, give me an identity card and get one.